This may shock you. 55 countries around the world still practice the death penalty. Now, when you hear the words death row, you probably picture something you've seen in a movie, maybe a long, sterile hallway, with cells on either side. But the reality of what it's like to be waiting for the end of your life is so much more complex. And frankly, so much more disturbing than you can imagine. The experience of a condemned prisoner varies wildly, depending on where in the world they're locked up. And some of these places, well, they are the stuff of nightmares. Each system has its own unique and often brutal spin on this ultimate punishment. But they are dramatically different. From Japan's death row that drives inmates insane with psychological torture, to Saudi Arabia's death row that has a dark, evil twist you won't see coming. We're talking about places where the line between justice and pure cruelty gets incredibly blurry. These aren't just prisons, they're waiting rooms for death, each with its own set of rules and horrors that are designed to break a person long before their final day arrives. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on these hidden, terrifying worlds. We're going to explore what life and death is really like for those living on borrowed time. This is a journey into some of the most extreme and unsettling places on Earth. So, turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let's look at the most shocking death rows around the world. Let's start with a country many of you are familiar with, the United States. Now, the US has a very long and complicated history with the death penalty, and even today, with over 2,300 people sitting on death row, it remains a deeply divisive issue. The process is famously long, often taking decades of appeals before an execution date is even set. This long wait is a form of torture in itself, a slow burn of uncertainty where every day could be one step closer to the end, or just another day in a concrete box. The inmates live in a state of suspended animation, caught between a life they no longer have, and a death that's always looming on the horizon. When that final 24-hour period finally arrives, it's a highly ritualized and surreal experience. The condemned prisoner is moved to a special holding cell, often called the Death Watch cell, located just steps away from the execution chamber itself. They're granted a last meal, a request that can range from a simple cheeseburger to an elaborate feast. They're also allowed final visits with family, lawyers, and a spiritual advisor. It's a strange, almost theatrical process, where every moment is meticulously planned and documented, leading up to the final, irreversible act. The primary method of execution in the US today is lethal injection, but it's a method plagued with problems. Botched executions, where inmates have been seen gasping for air or writhing in pain, have led some states to reconsider older, more visceral methods. Firing squads, the electric chair, and even the gas chamber are still legal options in some places, a grim reminder of a more brutal era of capital punishment. It's a stark contrast to the supposedly humane and clinical nature of the lethal injection, revealing the raw, violent reality that lies beneath the surface of the process. And the history of America's death row is filled with dark and troubling stories. Take the case of George Stinney Jr. In 1944, he was accused of murdering 2 young girls in South Carolina. After a trial that lasted less than a day, an all-white jury found him guilty. At just 14 years old, he was so small that he had to sit on a stack of books in the electric chair. 70 years later, in 2014, a judge vacated his conviction, declaring he didn't receive a fair trial. He remains the youngest person executed in the United States in the 20th century, a haunting symbol of the system's potential for catastrophic error. So, while the American system might seem more transparent than others, it's filled with its own unique brand of horror. The decades-long wait, the ritual of the final day, the controversy over execution methods, and the ghosts of cases like George Stinney's all combine to create a deeply unsettling picture. It's a system where the slow march toward death is a punishment all its own, a psychological gauntlet that grinds a person down over years or even decades before the final moment even arrives. Now, we travel from the United States to Saudi Arabia, a kingdom where the concept of justice and punishment is taken to an entirely different and frankly, terrifying level. Here, Sharia law governs all aspects of life, and the list of crimes that can land you a death sentence is shockingly broad. It's not just for murder. You can be sentenced to death for things like drug trafficking, armed robbery, blasphemy, sorcery, and even adultery. The system is swift and severe, and for those who find themselves on the wrong side of it, the outlook is incredibly bleak. The conditions for inmates on death row in Saudi Arabia are notoriously harsh. Prisoners are often held in severe isolation, cut off from the outside world and even from other inmates. Reports from human rights organizations paint a grim picture of overcrowded cells, poor sanitation, and a constant atmosphere of fear. Unlike the decades-long appeals process in the US, the journey to execution in Saudi Arabia can be terrifyingly fast. Inmates often have no idea when their time will come, living in a perpetual state of dread, knowing that any day could be their last. When the day of execution arrives, it is a far cry from the private, clinical procedure of a lethal injection. In Saudi Arabia, executions are often public spectacles. The condemned are typically taken to a public square, often after midday prayers on a Friday. A crowd gathers to watch as a state-appointed executioner carries out the sentence, most commonly by beheading with a sword. In some cases, for particularly heinous crimes, the body is then crucified and left on public display for hours, as a gruesome warning to others. It's a medieval practice carried out in the modern world. This public display has a dark, evil twist that goes beyond simple punishment. It's about power. It's a calculated act of state-sponsored terror, designed to instill fear and ensure compliance among the population. The message is brutally clear. This is what happens when you defy the state. Families of the executed are often not even given the body for burial. Denied the chance to grieve or have any sense of closure, they are left with nothing but the public horror of their loved one's final moments, a trauma that ripples through the community. The sheer brutality of the system is hard to comprehend. It's a world where an accusation of sorcery can lead to a public beheading, where the state uses death not just as a punishment, but as a tool of social control. The psychological torment of the inmates, combined with the public horror of the executions, makes Saudi Arabia's death row one of the most feared and disturbing in the world. It's a system that seems designed not just to end a life, but to erase a person's dignity and terrorize anyone who bears witness. From the public horror of Saudi Arabia, we move to the silent psychological terror of Japan's death row. On the surface, Japan is a country known for its order, politeness, and incredibly low crime rate. But beneath that veneer lies a penal system that has been condemned by human rights groups for its unique and profound cruelty. In Japan, the punishment is not just the sentence itself, but the way it's carried out. It's a system designed to drive a person to the brink of insanity long before the hangman's noose is ever tied. Imagine waking up every single morning not knowing if it will be your last. This is the reality for Japan's death row inmates. They are given no advance notice of their execution date. One morning they'll eat their breakfast, go about their routine, and then, without any warning, the guards will come. They'll be told that today is the day. They are then given a few short hours to write a will, meet with the chaplain, and prepare for their death. This constant, gut-wrenching uncertainty can last for years, even decades, creating a state of perpetual psychological torment. Life inside a Japanese detention center is one of extreme isolation and rigid control. Inmates are confined to small, solitary cells for over 23 hours a day. They are forbidden from speaking to other prisoners and are under constant surveillance. Every aspect of their existence is micromanaged, from when they can sleep, to how they must sit in their cells. They are not allowed to look around or make eye contact with guards without permission. It's a system that systematically strips away every last shred of autonomy and humanity, reducing a person to a mere object waiting for disposal. The cruelty of the system extends even beyond the prisoner. In a final, devastating blow, the inmate's family is not informed of the execution until after it has already happened. They receive a cold, official notice in the mail stating that their loved one is dead. They are denied the chance to say a final goodbye, to offer any last words of comfort, or even to know that the execution was imminent. It's a level of institutional callousness that is almost impossible to fathom, leaving families shattered and unable to properly grieve. This method of death by suspense has been widely criticized as a form of torture. Many inmates develop severe mental health issues, including psychosis and paranoia, as the years of uncertainty and isolation take their toll. Some have been on death row for over 40 years, living in this state of suspended terror for longer than they lived in the outside world. Japan's death row is a testament to the idea that cruelty doesn't always have to be physically violent. It can be silent, methodical, and psychological, a slow and deliberate dismantling of the human mind. Our next stop is a country that operates on a scale unlike any other: China. While many nations have moved to abolish or limit the use of the death penalty, China stands apart. The exact number of executions carried out here is a closely guarded state secret. But human rights organizations like Amnesty International estimate that China executes thousands of people every year, more than the rest of the world combined. It's a staggering figure that points to an industrial-scale system of capital punishment, often referred to as a death factory. The list of capital crimes in China is extensive and, at times, bewildering. While it includes violent crimes like murder and terrorism, it also covers a vast range of non-violent offenses. You can be sentenced to death for drug trafficking, corruption, embezzlement, and even tax evasion in extreme cases. This wide net means that a huge number of people are swept into the system, often with little chance of a fair trial. Confessions are often extracted through torture, and the judicial process is notoriously opaque, with a conviction rate of over 99%. For those sentenced to death, the conditions they face are brutal. Chinese prisons are infamous for their harsh environments, severe overcrowding, and forced labor. Inmates are often forced to work long hours in grueling conditions, manufacturing goods that sometimes end up on the international market. Food is scarce, medical care is minimal, and beatings from guards or other inmates are common. It's a fight for survival where the death sentence waiting at the end can almost seem like a release from the daily misery. The system also has a history of targeting high-profile individuals as a show of force. Powerful businessmen, corrupt politicians, and public figures who fall out of favor with the Communist Party can find themselves facing execution. These cases serve as a powerful warning to others to stay in line. One notable case was that of Lai Xiaomin, a former state asset manager dubbed the God of Wealth, who was executed for bribery and corruption in 2021. His downfall was a very public spectacle, a demonstration that no one is beyond the reach of the state's ultimate power. The sheer scale, the secrecy, and the speed of China's death penalty system are what make it so shocking. It is a well-oiled machine of death operating largely in the shadows. From the vast array of capital offenses to the brutal prison conditions and the use of executions as a political tool, China's approach to capital punishment is a chilling example of state power at its most absolute and terrifying. The world may never know the true number of lives ended by this system, a fact that is, in itself, deeply disturbing. We now journey to the Horn of Africa, to Somalia, a country that has been ravaged by decades of civil war, famine, and political instability. In this chaotic environment, the rule of law is fragile, and justice is often swift, brutal, and very public. Here, executions are not hidden behind prison walls. They are carried out in the open, by firing squad, for all to see. It's a raw and visceral form of punishment that reflects the harsh realities of life and death in one of the world's most dangerous places. In Somalia, the death penalty is primarily enforced by military courts, even for civilians. The list of crimes that can lead you to face a firing squad is long, and includes not just murder, but also terrorism-related offenses, which are broadly defined. Given the ongoing conflict with extremist groups like Al-Shabaab, many of the accused are alleged militants. The trials are often summary, lacking in due process, and heavily reliant on confessions that may have been obtained under duress. It's a system where the line between justice and wartime retribution is dangerously thin. The most notorious prison in the country is Mandera Prison, also known as the Guantanamo of Somalia. Conditions here are described as horrific. It's a place of extreme overcrowding, where disease runs rampant and inmates are subjected to torture and abuse. For those sentenced to death, there is no separate death row. They are simply held among the general population, living with the constant knowledge that their name could be called at any moment. The fear is palpable, a thick, heavy presence that hangs over every inch of the prison. The executions themselves are chillingly primitive. The condemned are tied to posts or stakes in a public area, a field, or even a beach. A hood is placed over their head, and a firing squad, typically composed of soldiers, takes aim and opens fire. These events are often filmed and photographed, with the images circulating online and in local media. It's a stark and brutal spectacle, a public ritual of violence that serves as a grim form of entertainment and a terrifying warning to others. The overall environment in Somalia is one where life is cheap, and death is a common public spectacle. The firing squads, the summary trials, and the hellish conditions of prisons like Mandera all contribute to a system that feels more like a battlefield than a justice system. It's a place where the state's power is demonstrated through the most direct and violent means possible. For those caught in its web, there is little hope for mercy, only the grim certainty of a very public and violent end. You might think that the death penalty is a thing of the past in Europe, a continent that prides itself on its commitment to human rights. But you'd be wrong. There is one country that stands as a stark exception, a final outpost of capital punishment on the continent, Belarus. Often referred to as Europe's last dictatorship, Belarus continues to execute its citizens, making it a chilling anomaly among its neighbors. The practice is shrouded in secrecy, and the methods are as brutal as the regime itself. In Belarus, the death penalty is reserved for aggravated murder and acts of terrorism. The number of executions is relatively low, typically just a handful each year, but the process is uniquely cruel and designed to maximize psychological distress. Like in Japan, prisoners on death row are not told their execution date. They live in a constant state of uncertainty, never knowing when the end will come. But the most disturbing part is how the sentence is carried out, a method that is both swift and shockingly personal. Many of these condemned prisoners are held in the infamous Minsk Detention Center No. 1, also known as Valadarka. This prison has a dark history, particularly for housing political prisoners and those who have fallen afoul of the authoritarian regime. For those on death row, the conditions are grim. They are kept in isolation, with reports of poor food, inadequate medical care, and a complete lack of information about their fate. The psychological pressure is immense, a deliberate tactic to break the spirit of the condemned. The method of execution in Belarus is a single gunshot to the back of the head. It's a cold, efficient, and deeply personal act. The prisoner is taken from their cell, forced to their knees, and shot from behind by an executioner. The entire process is designed to be as dehumanizing as possible, and the cruelty doesn't end there. In a practice that echoes the horrors of other regimes, the family is not informed of the execution beforehand. They are only notified weeks or even months later. Even worse, the location of the prisoner's grave is kept a state secret. The body is never returned to the family for burial. They are denied a final resting place for their loved one, denied any form of closure. All they receive is a certificate of death and a package with the inmate's prison belongings. This deliberate refusal to return the body is a final act of state power, a way to punish the family and erase the condemned from memory. It's this combination of secrecy, psychological torment, and profound disrespect for the dead that makes Belarus's system so uniquely disturbing. For our final stop, we head to a location many people associate with paradise Indonesia. With its beautiful beaches, lush jungles, and vibrant culture, it's a dream destination for travelers. But behind this idyllic facade lies a justice system with a very hard line, especially when it comes to one particular crime: drug trafficking. Indonesia's fierce war on drugs has led to numerous high-profile executions, sparking international outrage and diplomatic crises. It's a place where the dream of paradise can quickly turn into a nightmare of death row. While murder and terrorism also carry the death penalty, it's the cases involving narcotics that have grabbed global headlines. Foreign nationals caught smuggling drugs into the country, including from countries like Australia, Brazil, and Nigeria, have found themselves facing an Indonesian firing squad. the government maintains a staunchly defiant stance, arguing that the death penalty is a necessary deterrent to protect its citizens from the scourge of drugs, despite a lack of evidence that it actually works. This has led to tense standoffs with other nations, who plead for clemency for their citizens, usually to no avail. Life on death row in Indonesia can be a long and agonizing wait. Inmates are often held in maximum security prisons, like the infamous Nusa Kambangan, an island prison often called the Alcatraz of Indonesia. While conditions can vary, the psychological toll of living under a death sentence for years is immense. Unlike in Japan or Belarus, inmates in Indonesia are typically given 72 hours notice of their execution. This 3-day window is a period of intense and focused dread, a final countdown, where they can make peace with their families and prepare for the end. The method of execution is by firing squad, a highly organized and ritualistic event. The condemned are taken to a remote location, often in the middle of the night. They are given the choice to stand, sit, or kneel, and to have their eyes covered. 12 executioners line up, but only 3 have live rounds in their rifles. The others have blanks. This is done so that no single person can be certain they fired a fatal shot. If the prisoner is not killed by the initial volley, a commander delivers a final shot to the head. The cases of the Bali 9, a group of 9 Australians arrested for smuggling heroin in 2005, brought Indonesia's death penalty into the global spotlight. Despite years of legal appeals and intense diplomatic pressure from Australia, the 2 ringleaders, Andrew Chan and Mayuran Sukumaran, were executed by firing squad in 2015. Their case ignited a fierce debate about sovereignty, justice, and the morality of capital punishment, highlighting the stark and uncompromising reality of Indonesia's death row. It serves as a grim warning that even in paradise, the ultimate price can be paid. These are just a few of the world's most shocking death rows. From the psychological torture in Japan to the public spectacles in Saudi Arabia, and the industrial scale of executions in China, it's clear that the path to state-sanctioned death is paved with unique and often terrifying forms of cruelty. Each system reflects the values, fears, and power structures of the society that created it. It's a sobering look at the ultimate expression of justice, or what passes for it, in different corners of our world. The stories of these places and the people within them raise profound questions. What does it mean to have justice? Is there a humane way to end a life? And what is the true cost of the death penalty? Not just on the condemned, but on the societies that carry it out? The experiences of inmates on these death rows show us that the punishment is rarely just about the final moment of death, but about the long, agonizing, and often brutal journey to get there. Exploring these dark corners of the world reminds us how different legal systems can be, and how the concept of punishment can be taken to extremes that are hard for many of us to comprehend. Which country surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. And if you found this exploration into the world's most disturbing places compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories that take you to the edge of the map. Thank you for watching.